joining us. It has been a busy week. Wildfires burned in California, Major League Baseball got its first female umpire, and in D.C., this happened.
President Trump caught White House reporters off guard today when he took a walk on the roof.
Sir, why are you on the roof?
Mr. President, what are you doing up there?
I mean, it's a fair question, though it also says a lot about the chaos of this administration that the president just fully snoopied on national TV. And we'll probably forget about it by next week. And the thing is, it got even weirder.
What are you trying to build? Sir, can you approve? You saying more missiles? Are you building missiles? What?
You know, that may actually be a perfect encapsulation of Trump's presidency. A bunch of people yelling, "What the fuck are you doing?" while he does a C- Hitler impression. But we're going to dive straight in with our main story tonight, which concerns immigration, the thing that brought America the likes of Gloria Estefan from Cuba, Albert Einstein from Germany, and Elon Musk from hell. Specifically, we're going to talk about immigration enforcement. Over the last few months, you've undoubtedly seen reports of armed, masked police raiding areas like farms, parks, and Home Depots. And the White House's social media has been cheering it on, from posts like this meme showing DEI standing for deport every illegal, to this shit. Look, we all know this, but sometimes it is worth reiterating. This White House is full of the pettiest little bitches imaginable. And while that video is obviously disgusting, on the plus side, I now know what song I want played at Trump's funeral. I know it will be hard to get in, but you can throw a Bluetooth speaker pretty far. And it's not just the White House. Others have been getting in on this shit posting, with perhaps the most telling example coming from a regional Border Patrol office, which posted this celebration of its agents in Southern California's premier sector. Okay. If I may quote an insufferable man on a first Bumble date, have you ever seen Star Wars? Because that's pretty famously the bad guy. Imagine how morally bankrupt you have to be to watch the most famous villain in cinematic history murdering a bunch of people, some of whom are literally begging for help, and think, he is so us. But for all the administration's talk of targeting dangerous criminals, the reality is very different, as this LA neighborhood found out.
An abandoned cart, the only sign that Enrique, the ice cream man, had been taken into custody. Enrique had been selling ice cream in the area for almost 20 years. He was a part of community events, and neighbors insist not a threat.
I just don't understand it. Like, go after a criminal, don't go after the ice cream man.
Many can't believe how he was taken, they say, by unidentified men in unmarked SUVs.
Doesn't seem legal to me at all. I would think that you'd have to have paperwork and, I mean, it just seems crazy.
Yeah, it does. And why the fuck are immigration agents going after ice cream sellers anyway? In that video where brave hero Darth Vader was fighting bad guys like meth, fentanyl, fake news and cocaine, I don't remember one of those labels being guy who sells popsicles. But that woman saying, hey, this doesn't feel legal, raises a question that a lot of people are asking right now. So given that, tonight, let's talk about immigration enforcement and try and answer a few things. What the fuck is happening right now? Who are the people in masks grabbing our neighbours off the streets? And what are the actual rules here? And let's start with what's happening, because as we've discussed before, immigration authorities have been given pretty clear marching orders by this fucking guy.
We are looking to set a goal of a minimum of 3,000 arrests for ICE every day. We can't take the risk of letting these Biden illegals roam around freely so that the next American daughter can get raped, the next American kid can get murdered, the next American family can get splintered and torn apart by people that came into this country unchecked, uncontrolled, unvetted, uninvited by the American people.
Now, that absolute fire hose of xenophobic bullshit would be hard to hear from anyone, let alone Stephen Miller, who looks like what would happen if Caillou smoked 2 packs a day for 1,000 years. He looks like a Funko Pop of Lex Luthor, except his eyes are somehow more lifeless. Now, that 3,000 arrest a day number is part of the administration's larger goal of deporting 1 million immigrants in 1 year, which, it's worth noting, would be more than double the previous record of 400,000 when Obama was president, which was already very high. But notably, they don't seem to be getting near their target numbers. They're apparently at just over 280,000 deportations, so getting to 1 million in just 6 months seems very unlikely. And they have backed themselves into this corner, because promising to deport 1 million criminal migrants is one thing, but once you're in charge, you then have to find that many of them, which is going to be hard if they don't exist in the numbers that you're claiming, which they don't. It's like promising to apprehend 10,000 Fred Dursts a day. There just aren't that many out there, so either you have to admit that your target number was bullshit in the first place, or you have to drastically widen your definition of what a Fred Durst is until you're eventually arresting any Gen Xer wearing a hat. But instead of conceding their numbers were inflated, the administration's trying to drive up arrests at all costs. Not only has Miller told ICE agents to target Home Depots and 7-Elevens, he's giving them a lot of extra help. ICE has rapidly deputised a record number of local police to function as deportation agents. They pulled in Border Patrol as well as the National Guard, at least 25% of the DEA, up to 80% of the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobaccos and Firearms, and even members of the US Postal Inspection Service. And this cross-agency collaboration is why, at the site of a raid like this one at a nightclub in Colorado, you can see personnel wearing gear with logos for the DEA, FBI, postal inspectors, FBI again, ICE's enforcement and removal operations, and the IRS. And for what it's worth, I can't imagine the postal inspectors love getting thrown onto the 3 a.m. shift, nor can I imagine it's much fun to turn up at the club and end up getting arrested by the Mail. And this mass reallocation of resources means other crimes are going less police. At the FBI, for instance, agents have been told to scale up immigration enforcement and deprioritise white-collar cases. And even within ICE, their Homeland Security Investigations Unit, which usually focuses on major offences like cybercrime and drug trafficking, has been redeployed onto lower-level immigration cases. One agent there has even complained, no drug cases, no human trafficking, no child exploitation. It's infuriating. And I've got to say, for a guy who pandered so heavily to people convinced paedophile sex offenders and traffickers had infiltrated our government, Trump's sure making the government a lot friendlier to them. Ghislaine Maxwell's in a nicer cell now. Lawrence Taylor's advising on kids' physical fitness. Fuck it. At this point, if he's willing to wear a MAGA hat, I really don't see why Roman Polanski can't come back. Still, officials like Border Czar Tom Homan insist that none of that matters because they're catching a ton of hardened criminals.
For those we arrest, 70%, approximately 70%, 70% of those we arrest are criminals. Who's the other 30%? The other 30% are national security threats. Most national security threats don't have a criminal history because they try to lay low until it's time for them to do things bad.
OK. Speaking things bad aside, Homan is getting a lot wrong there, because under his logic, I guess anyone can be a national security threat, even, for instance, your local ice cream man. Sure, the worst thing he's ever done was maybe give someone one of those SpongeBob popsicles a la Salvador Dali, but don't be fooled. According to this decaying corpse of a baseball umpire, he's probably just lying low till it's time for him to do things bad. But also, Homan's numbers there are nowhere near ICE's own data, because it turns out only around 40% of those arrested by ICE had any criminal convictions, which can include things like traffic infractions, and just 7% were convicted of any sort of violent crime. In fact, as of the end of June, people with only civil immigration violations, no criminal charges or convictions, made up the largest percentage of ICE arrests nationwide. And maybe the clearest sign that this is more about pushing up numbers than catching violent criminals on the run is that one of the key places they're now fishing for arrests is immigration court, when people show up for their hearings.
We captured the moment 2 men went from migrants
Do not approach interpreters
to detainees. It happened last week at Dallas Immigration Court when nearly a dozen people showed up to have their asylum cases heard. Their cases were dismissed by the judge, and when they walked out of the courtroom, plainclothes federal agents were waiting to take them into custody. ICE is asking immigration judges across the country to dismiss the court cases of certain migrants so the agency can arrest them once their hearings end and place them in a fast-track deportation process known as expedited removal. Outside a Miami courthouse, this migrant in cuffs says in Spanish, it's a trap.
Look, that is all awful, very much including the term expedited removal, which sounds less like a legal process and more like a phrase you'd see with an exclamation point on the packaging for a particularly powerful laxative. And to be clear about what is happening there, generally, you can't be deported if you have an active immigration case pending in court. But if your case is dismissed and you've been here for less than 2 years, the government can move to put you through expedited removal, meaning you can be deported without any hearing at all. So, administration attorneys are asking for cases to be dismissed, and immigration judges, all of whom work for the DOJ, have been told to grant those requests. It is the laziest possible way to juice up your numbers because you're targeting people who are going through the system the right way and turning them into people that you can immediately arrest and deport. Trump is also working to end programs that give temporary legal protection to certain immigrants from countries like Afghanistan, Haiti and Venezuela. And by September, it's estimated these changes will cause nearly 1 million people who've been vetted and given permission to live and work here to lose those protections and become at risk for deportation. But obviously the most visible aspect of this surge in enforcement has been those raids that you've seen on TV, a term, by the way, that Tom Homan does not care for.
Well, I don't like the term raid because when we go out, there's a targeted enforcement operation. We know who we're looking for, and we have fugitive operations operational sheets at every arrest. You say, here's I'm going to go arrest, here's where I think I'm going to find him, here's his immigration history, here's his criminal history. We're not going on the streets looking for people different than us. We're targeted enforcement operations.
Oh, that's reassuring. I'm glad that Homer's not just arresting people different from him, because that'd be bad news for anyone who doesn't sound like John C. Reilly being actively drowned. Unfortunately, his claim there that ICE is engaged in strictly targeted enforcement is at odds with internal emails showing immigration officials have been urged to turn the creative knob up to 11 when it comes to enforcement, and that if it involves handcuffs on wrists, it's probably worth pursuing, which in another context would obviously be very hot, but really isn't here. One tactic suggested is interviewing and potentially arresting what are called collaterals, basically people just encountered while looking for someone else. That is something that this local station witnessed firsthand when it did a ride-along with ICE.
These ICE agents were looking for an MS-13 gang member, but spotted this man meeting up with a painting crew on his way to a work site.
This guy's been eyeballing since he pulled up, so just trying to figure out what's going on with him.
He was arrested, also without a prior criminal record, and now sits in a holding facility in New Orleans.
Yeah, that is absurd for many reasons, including that eyeballing should never be a pretext for arrest, unless, that is, you're a tarsier, the nocturnal Asian primate that always looks like you just caught it cheating on its wife. There should probably be consequences for eyeballing someone like that. So clearly, enforcement is nowhere near as targeted as this administration likes to claim. But the scary thing is, it doesn't have to be. And it's worth taking a minute to talk about the rules governing these arrests, which are a lot looser than you might think. When ICE sets out to arrest someone, they don't need a criminal arrest warrant, which are issued by judges. They can just do it with an administrative warrant, which can be signed off on by an agency staffer. Those don't entitle ICE to go into someone's home, but they don't have to tell you that. Officers can also just stop and question people on the street, and as Homan will tell you, they don't need much justification for that.
They just need the totality of the circumstances, right? They just got through the observation, you know, get articulable facts based on their location, their occupation, their physical appearance, their actions. Agents are trained what they need to detain somebody temporarily and question them. It's not probable cause, it's reasonable suspicion.
OK, setting aside that stumbling over the word articulable is objectively very funny. Reasonable suspicion is a low bar. I have reasonable suspicion to believe that Tom Homan was doing that interview on about 12 Tylenol PMs, but that is different from me having proof, isn't it? And I should note, the administration's currently fighting a court's ban on them stopping people based solely on their ethnicity, language, occupation or presence at a particular location. And it's unclear if that'll ultimately be allowed. But other things the administration's doing that sure feel like they're breaking the law often aren't. Take the dystopian visuals of agents wearing masks. It turns out no federal law forbids federal law enforcement personnel from wearing masks, so they can do it. But why are they? Well, the administration claims it's for their own protection, arguing early last month there'd been a 690% increase in assaults on agents from the year before, which does sound alarming, although you should know first, it turns out that meant there'd been a total of 79 assaults at that point, up from 10 the previous year. But also, they seem to be applying the word assault very loosely. Here's Kristi Noem defining what she sees as violence against federal agents in extremely broad terms.
I will tell you that violence is anything that threatens them and their safety. So it is doxing them, it's videotaping them, where they're at when they're out on operations, encouraging other people to come and to throw things, rocks, bottles, we've seen Molotov cocktails thrown at them.
Wow, that is quite an escalation from videotaping to Molotov cocktail. Those aren't remotely the same thing. I know that because one of those things is happening to me right now. And we've seen that standard in action in June when New York City mayoral candidate Brad Lander locked arms with an immigrant in a courthouse as ICE agents tried to detain him. He was arrested for impeding and assaulting officers, which sure isn't what this looks like. It looks more like something you see in the chapter of a history book titled How It Started. And for what it's worth, ICE agents wearing masks and not being identifiable makes everyone less safe, including them, especially in states with stand-your-ground laws. One law professor pointed out somebody's going to get shot or killed, and it may well be an officer. And I'm hesitant to even point that out, since imagining a crime against an ICE agent currently seems to be enough for this bird's nest of a human to count it as one. And it sure seems like all this, from the drive to hit numbers to the removal of safeguards, is a perfect storm for trouble. Perhaps best encapsulated by the sheer number of videos out there of US citizens being detained or in some cases even arrested by federal agents.
Witnesses capturing a traffic stop involving ICE and Border Patrol agents on Brown Street in Rochester Tuesday.
What's your name?
My name is Jose Castro. I'm a citizen here.
I said, brother, I'm American, I'm American, I'm American.
He says the agent asked him what city and hospital he was born in.
I said, I don't know. I don't know. And because I didn't know, he threw me to the gate and he twisted my arm.
This was the moment Border Patrol and Florida Highway Patrol officers detained a U.S. citizen while conducting immigration enforcement.
I got rights to talk, bro.
You got no right here.
I do.
Illegal, brother. Get up.
OK, that is all obviously terrible. And while this is by no means the most important thing, who the fuck even knows what hospital they were born in? I mean, I do happen to know mine, Her Majesty's Royal Cumberbunch Hospital for Children and Paisley Adults, but that's only because I lived there until I was 30. But it's also pretty difficult to hear Tom Homan say people aren't targeted based on their race when you see an officer tell an American citizen who happens to be a Spanish-speaking brown guy on his way to a landscaping job, say, "You got no rights here, you're an illegal." That feels like the most naked racism you could possibly see on camera, at least until Stephen Miller starts an OnlyFans. And if you want to see this whole story in one place, just look at this incident in LA.
Hey, no les abra. Are you serious, bro?
Pope Garcia was capturing a raid on camera when he suddenly became the target as well.
Get him down! Get him down!
The 37-year-old U.S. citizen tackled and taken into custody.
You want to go to jail? Fine. You got it.
He says he was first taken to a holding area at Dodger Stadium where he heard the agents boasting about how many people they had grabbed.
Like, how many bodies did you guys catch today? And one of them said 31, and they started like, yay, like, it was a good day today, and they were like high-fiving each other.
He says the officers also debated about what they could charge him with.
At first, it was assault of a federal agent, but only later, the narrative started switching because the video was out.
Yeah, he's actually seeking damages over that incident. And I should say, we contacted DHS, and they maintain he assaulted and verbally harassed a Border Patrol agent, only one of which is even a crime, and neither of which they've charged him with. Also, while DHS ignored most of our questions, when we asked about that Darth Vader video, they said, Not to spoil the plot, but as any Star Wars fan knows, Darth Vader is also Anakin Skywalker. I don't think DHS needs to regale the American public on the heroism of Skywalker they know, which is just an incredible, deeply shitty response. I'd honestly love to know their disingenuous takes on other movie villains. Actually, if you think about it, Thanos was the real hero of the Avengers movies because, as any Marvel fan knows, Thanos used to be a baby, and babies aren't evil. And all of this gets even more worrying when you remember that Trump's big, beautiful bill contained a massive surge of funding for immigration enforcement, roughly $170 billion over the next few years, some of which is being set aside to fund the hiring of 10,000 more ICE agents. And for what it's worth, massive, rapid hiring sprees never tend to work out well. As we mentioned before, when Border Patrol surged hiring under Bush, they struggled to hit their numbers and wound up hiring cartel members and an actual serial killer. And it's not a great sign for who ICE is appealing to, that they're currently posting gross recruitment ads like this fake minivan ad tagged, "Think about how many criminal illegal aliens you could fit in this bad boy." And they seem more than a little bit desperate already, as they've removed age limits for hiring agents. And this week they shared this video starring their newest recruit.
Hey everybody, Dean Cain here. And for those who don't know, I am a sworn law enforcement officer as well as being a filmmaker. I felt it was important to join with our first responders to help secure the safety of all Americans, not just talk about it. So I joined up.
You know, there's an old saying in Hollywood: if all you can get is Dean Cain, you are fucked. Now, I'm not saying that ICE isn't finding people. I'm just saying, when you are reduced to pinning a badge on the 59-year-old star of the dog who saved Christmas, the dog who saved Christmas Vacation, the dog who saved the holidays, the dog who saved Halloween, the dog who saved Easter, and the dog who saved summer, maybe you are in trouble. Although, on the plus side, no need for that guy to wear a mask because the chances of anyone recognising him are fucking zero. So what can we do here? Well, as powerless as this can feel, as individuals, there are still actions you can take. Experts say if you personally witness an ICE arrest and are able to safely record the interaction, you should do so. You've seen what a difference that can make tonight. For more guidance on how to do this and what to do with your recording, go to this address. And if you're approached by an immigration enforcement while out in public, whether or not you're a citizen, attorneys told us the only things you should say to them are, "Am I free to leave? And I want to speak to a lawyer." That's it. You have the right to remain silent. And I recognise that in some cases you may be unable to help yourself from saying, "Didn't you used to be Superman? I thought you died. I can't believe I'm meeting a filmmaker." But that really is it. For more specific information about your rights, which may be slightly different depending on where you are, you can visit this address. And while I know this is all very bleak, it's worth remembering that supporting immigrants is actually the majority stance in this country. And people witnessing the brutal reality of these raids has had an impact. Trump's approval on immigration has dropped sharply in the last few months, with 55% now disapproving of what he's doing. Meanwhile, support for a pathway to citizenship for long-term undocumented immigrants has climbed to nearly 80%. Look, don't get me wrong, we are still in a very grim moment. But the right-wing narrative is that most people are rabid to punish anyone trying to become new Americans. But that is just not true. Nor are there bullshit claims about who's being targeted and arrested. And I'm not saying that everything ICE is doing right now is illegal. What I'm saying is a whole bunch of it feels like it really should be. And we need to change that at our earliest opportunity. Because the fact is, despite this administration's claims, the majority of people they are sweeping up are not drug dealers, human traffickers, or violent criminals. Instead, they're ice cream vendors, immigrants who show up to court hearings, and even US citizens. Although I will give immigration enforcement agencies one thing: the way they seem to view themselves is sadly increasingly spot on, and that is violent, cruel, and hiding behind a fucking mask. And now, this.
And now, local news teams make everyone uncomfortable on National Underwear Day.
National Night Out tonight, which we talked about. National Underwear Day.
Oh.
Parade around the house, or if you're feeling confident, post a pic on social media. Your underwear.
Oh, I didn't think you were going to go there. So glad you said don't go without. National Underwear Day.
I wish somebody would have told me.
You would have participated?
You would have won some.
Oh, my.
Yep.
TMI on a Tuesday.
National Underwear Day.
I'm celebrating.
Briefs. Briefs. Boxers. Boxer briefs. Bikini. What is that? Bikini panties or something?
Yeah, in the shape of a bikini.
Thong up your butt. High-waisted granny panties.
You know, tighties, whiteys, those are the ones that can mess with your reproduction. For guys.
Because they're tight?
Yeah. And that's why you're supposed to wear the boxers.
Right. What about the boxers?
Some people can't wear the boxers because, you know, anyway.
No, I don't.
Oh, I figured you wouldn't.
Yeah, I like the boxer briefs. Those are they're very comfortable.
There you go.
Moving on. Finally tonight, a quick word about Chuck Schumer, whose time on Earth seems to be represented by how far down his nose his glasses are. Schumer is the leading Democrat in the Senate, which frankly isn't ideal given how weak his responses to the Trump administration have been so far. For instance, when it withheld hundreds of millions of dollars from universities, claiming it was to combat anti-Semitism, Schumer went on TV to proudly announce Democrats' counterpunch.
So we sent him a very strong letter just the other day asking 8 very strong questions about why this isn't just a pretext.
Well, you'll let us know if you get a response to that letter.
Yeah, I mean, it's not ideal when you're getting dunked on by a CNN anchor. But I do love the way he said, we sent him a very strong letter, as if that is literally anything. He might as well have said, we had a gerbil fart in an envelope and hand-delivered it to Trump's childhood neighbour. Either way, you are not getting through to him. But I actually want to talk less about Chuck Schumer himself and more about two of his favourite people, Joe and Eileen Bailey. They're a couple that, throughout Schumer's career, he has talked about a lot.
They're a middle-class couple in Massapequa, which is a suburb on Long Island. Joe and Eileen Bailey, this middle-class couple, they bought into Reagan Republicanism in 1980. Joe and Eileen are worried about losing their jobs or their friends' jobs. The Baileys really don't believe in trickle-down. They don't believe in a whole lot of government spending, but they believe in tax breaks for kids to go to college. He's an insurance adjuster and lives in the New York suburbs. By New York standards, he makes $50,000 a year. If he lived in the middle of the country, he'd make 40. Wife works in a medical office. She makes about 20. She might make 15 elsewhere. And, you know, I have guided my political life through the Baileys.
OK, first, Chuck, stop putting all their business out there. Joe makes $50,000 a year, Eileen makes 20. They own 2 cars, a Taurus and a Honda Odyssey, and they have sex 3 times a week. Joe usually initiates, but their therapist is encouraging Eileen to get more in touch with her sensual side and surprise Joe with some sexy lingerie when he gets home from insurance adjusting, which again pays him $50,000. But you heard him. The Baileys have guided Chuck Schumer's political life, which is a little weird given they don't exist. Seriously, he invented them. Schumer first introduced the world to the Baileys in his 2007 book, Positively American, Winning Back the Middle-Class Majority, One Family at a Time. In it, he mentions the Baileys an astonishing 265 times in 264 pages. But he'd apparently been talking about them for years before the book was published. One of his former spokespeople said he's always asking, what would the Baileys think? And to be fair, Schumer acknowledges that some may find this a little weird.
If you ask my staff, I've been talking about and talking to the Baileys for 15 years. I have conversations with them. One of my staffers once said I had imaginary friends to the press. Got me in some trouble. But these people are real, and I respect them, and I really love them, and I care about them.
OK, sure, but they're literally not real, Chuck. You invented them. And look, I'm not saying that imagining a manifestation of your target demo's wants and needs is necessarily a bad thing. I do it myself. I have a made-up couple that I consult when making this show. Jerry and Patricia Globdukes from New York City, Iowa. Jerry's a dental hygienist who makes $37 a year, and Patricia's a snake masseuse who makes $60,000, but she might make $20 million elsewhere. I love the Globdukes, and I fear them. Occasionally, my staff will say, should we make the show fun this week and not talk about something incredibly sad or boring? But the Globdukes will shout, no, John, you need to do a 25-minute deep dive about corn, so I say, well, if that's what the Globdukes want, let's give it to them. But even if you can understand the potential utility of creating a prototypical voter in your head, this goes way beyond that, because Schumer's given the Baileys an unnecessarily detailed backstory. For instance, he said Joe takes off his cap and sings along with the national anthem before the occasional Islanders game. OK. And when their daughter Megan, oh yeah, they've got kids by the way, told Eileen a friend was caught cheating on a quiz, Eileen was appalled because lying is not tolerated in the house ever. Also, Eileen apparently helps with the clothing drive at her church, and her father had a prostate cancer scare a few years ago. Again, this is a made-up family. None of these people exist. But wait, I'm still not done. Apparently, Joe Bailey would never have a goatee. They watch Sex and the City and Desperate Housewives, though Joe pretends not to like either show. They think most baseball players probably take steroids, and if they were to ever go out to a Chinese restaurant, they would order Kung Pao chicken. That is a J.R.R. Tolkien level of gratuitous backstory, and I don't say that lightly. But the Baileys do seem to have a lot of sway over Schumer's politics, as he's brought them up when discussing everything from the 2008 financial crisis to cybersecurity, which he framed as protecting the security the Baileys feel when they go online to buy birthday presents. And to hear Schumer tell it, the Baileys' views can be complicated.
The Baileys are not anti-immigration, but they are anti-illegal immigration. They really dislike the Enron executives who stole money, but they hate the people who burn the flag even more. They are pro-choice. They understand that a fundamental decision like that should be made by the individual, but they're glad their church isn't.
Really? Are you sure about that? I'm struggling to picture someone saying, I'm definitely pro-choice, but when I go to church and hear my pastor say that abortion is murder, it does make me very happy. And look, I'm not saying that no one could think that, but if you're claiming the Baileys' views are those of the typical middle-class voter, you're taking a much bigger swing. It'd be like arguing the average American's #1 priority is replacing Lincoln on the $5 bill with Pikachu. I'm not saying no one thinks that, and having seen it, I might even be one of them, but let's not pretend it's a mainstream belief. And the more you hear about the Baileys, the more it feels like they represent a very particular slice of the electorate. Schumer said that they supported the civil rights and anti-Vietnam War movements because they understood that morality was on the side of the protesters. But starting in the late 60s, when those protesters cursed the returning veterans and Stokely Carmichael advocated armed resistance against the white ruling class, the Baileys were lost, which, fun fact, is both a misleading history of the civil rights movement and what people who never supported it tend to say. And yet Schumer will insist the Baileys' concerns are widespread and that they could just as easily have been the Ramirez's of Port Chester, the Kims of Elk Grove, California, or the Saleems of Dearborn, Michigan. But crucially, for all he talks about how much he loves the Baileys, they don't seem to return that love, because in 2021, he explained how the Baileys had voted in the past few presidential elections.
They voted for Clinton and then they voted for Bush. They're not a member of one party or another, they're independent.
Did they vote for Donald Trump?
Both of them did in 2016. Joe Bailey still did in 2020 with misgivings, but she didn't.
Yeah. The Baileys voted for Trump. And just this March, a reporter actually got an update on their voting history.
You said the Baileys voted for Trump in 2016. They split Trump-Biden in 2020. I'm wondering who they voted for in 2024.
Probably voted for Trump. Probably voted for Trump. But if you ask them why, I think they'd say, above all, crime.
OK, so to recap, of the 6 votes the Baileys had across the last 3 presidential elections, 5 went to Donald Trump, most recently because of crime, which, for what it's worth, was down in every category last year, with violent crime at its lowest rate in 20 years. They also think the civil rights movement went too far and aren't against immigration, just illegal immigration. And this is the couple who, in Chuck Schumer's own words, have guided his political life. And at this point, it might be worth asking, is that a good idea? Because the truth is, Schumer's devotion to his imaginary friends may help explain why he and the Democratic Party have been so underwhelming in recent years, because he seems to be focusing a huge amount on the interest of the Baileys from Long Island, while forgetting other voters actually exist. And look, I'm not saying that he shouldn't think about how his messaging plays with suburban middle-class voters with pretty right-of-centre views, or that they're not theoretically winnable in the future. What I am saying is, by tailoring your policies so heavily to them, you are pulling yourself to the right. And in doing so, could be alienating not only the rest of your base, but new voters looking for a party that speaks for them. So Senator Schumer, at least when it comes to formulating policy, it might be time to break up with the Baileys, which really shouldn't be that hard to do, given that politically, it seems they've already broken up with you. And I know you are not going to listen to me. After all, I'm not a fictional couple from Long Island. But luckily, we actually managed to track down the Baileys, and they have a special message just for you.
Hi, Chuck. I'm Joe Bailey.
I'm Eileen Bailey.
And we're the Baileys. We're just your everyday middle-class couple from Massapequa, Long Island.
I work in a medical office, and I make about $20,000 a year.
And I'm an insurance adjuster, and I make about $50K a year.
Though, if you lived in the middle of the country, you'd make 40.
No kidding.
I don't know why 40 is such a funny thing to say.
We wanted to talk to you, Chuck, because apparently you've spent your whole political career thinking about us.
Which is a bit weird, and to be honest, a little creepy.
You need to talk to some other people, because I know you think you can win us over, I mean us specifically, but I gotta tell you, there's no way that's happening.
I voted for Trump in 2 of the last 3 elections.
And I voted for Trump in all 3, though I had misgivings in 2020.
The point is, Chuck, we're not who you seem to think we are.
We're Republicans, Chuck.
Yeah, we're super Republicans.
I think they're putting litter boxes in schools.
Every time a celebrity dies, I tweet, vaxxed.
You wanna hear a weird, crazy thing? I get super, super mad when store clerks don't say Merry Christmas, even in June.
I got banned from Chili's for screaming at someone wearing a mask.
I take ivermectin every day out of spite.
Here's a question, Chuck. Where's my straight pride parade, huh?
There is only 2 things that we are afraid of: rainbow fentanyl and drag queen story hour.
And also the New York subway.
Well, yeah,
obviously.
It's a terrifying place. We both have 10 MyPillows each.
Yeah, not to sleep on though.
Nope.
They're terrible, but we do have a ton of them because we support free speech. Also, let me just get this out there. If you're putting your pronouns in your email, you should be scooped up from your home, you should be thrown in jail, and you should be never let out.
Scoop.
Just scooped up.
Oh, I stormed the Capitol. I got this from Pelosi's office. I'll hang this sign right over my dick.
And then I just come in on that dick and I slosh it around in my mouth and I slosh that dick around some more.
What else?
What else?
Our own kids don't even speak to us, Chuck. You shouldn't either.
And we're not saying you never have to think about us again.
But if you ever do, try and keep in mind that we are not the people you are making us out to be.
Also, Chuck, we fucking hate Kung Pao chicken.
We're actually like pretty adventurous eaters.
Yeah, I lean toward Cantonese dishes. Talk about some sweet and sour pork, talk about some rice, talk about dumplings with the tang sauce.
Right, I myself prefer Sichuan, dan noodles, twice cooked pork.
The point is, stop patronizing us, Chuck. We contain multitudes.
Yeah, most of which fucking suck.
So go make your political decisions by talking to a broader range of people, Chuck.
Free yourselves of the Baileys.
We'll miss you, Chuck. We really will.
Yeah, but we'll always be here for you, pal. I mean, not really. We're fictional people, Chuck.
We're in your head, you fucking weirdo.
Bye! Hey, that really turned me on. Do you want to get out of here?
Big time.
Fuck under that sign.
That's our show. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next week tonight.
They're terrible.
They're awful pillows. They're so lumpy. They're like. You ever pass out in garbage on the street?
Just that one time.
That's what it's like.
I always thought it was like if you leave mashed potatoes out for a couple of days and they're rock hard, and then if you just put them in a bunch of sheets.
Just rock hard mash?
Rock hard mashed into old sheets.
They feel like dead humans.
They feel like dead humans are inside of pillowcases, and we won't sleep on them.
Scooped.
Just scooped up.
Scooped.